So welcome back. We're going to actually now look at Candy's work, and I'm dying to know the thought process behind some of the things that she's created. So let's start off with, first of all, just showing off your beautiful salon space, because it's so gorgeous. So has the salon been in the same location all these years?
The salon has been in that location here for 42 years. So it's had a lot of makeovers over time, but it's been in the same space for 42 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing. And I would imagine the fact that you're an education-based salon, it attracts a totally different type of stylist to you and colorist, because you have your academy and this. So talk to me about the education part and what that does to feed and drive the type of stylist that you want to work in this salon.
Well, as I said before, in Georgia, you don't have to go to beauty school to get your license. So we're very lucky to be able to have folks that not only graduate beauty school, of course, we love our future professionals out there, but also to train our own. And so we have a very steadfast training program that's about 18 months to 2 years of how we test everyone out. But I will say that in today's world, to be able to thrive in a business of 50 chairs, you must have a very solid education model. There's no way that I'm going to attract the kind of people that I want to work for us if I was just, quote unquote, a factory. And I think that larger salons that were created in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and years 2000s, they're all seeing an uptick of the loss of people due to independent contractors. And I think one of the reasons why I've been able to thrive and survive is simply because I have such an intense education model. From French cutting to balayage, obviously that's what we teach mostly in our academy, but the way that we do things are very systemized. So everyone in our salon does really the work of the same. So in other words, we all learn the same way to cut a bob, we all learn the same way to do long layering, we all learn things. So that really helps us to be more in quality control, but also to teach our guests that they're going to get that premium product.
Beautiful. So let's now look at some of your beautiful work, which is, I think, so super exciting. So here we go. All right. So talk to me about this particular look.
Well, this is the minking technique that you're getting ready to learn this afternoon. So I think in balayage, it was really important for me early on to identify techniques that obviously could look soft and seamless. This particular technique is done by teasing the hair and creating more of an quote-unquote ombre type of feel on the ends of the hair. And when the trend of ombre and balayage for long layered hair became so vastly popular, I immediately shifted gears to the short hair market, because obviously I felt like the techniques of balayage simply sat mostly in long hair. And every technique that I do, I name for a reason for teaching, and this is the minking technique.
I'm so excited to learn this technique. I think it's totally cool. I never thought I would say I love redheads. Being a natural redhead has always been a challenge for me, but I have to say this as a redhead is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm in my old age appreciating red so much more.
Well, you are a beautiful redhead, and my mother was actually a redhead, so I have an affinity for redheads. But what made this technique come alive for me was, how can you take long, beautiful, straight fabric, which would be a red hair in this case, and not muck it up with highlights around the face or highlights in the top. And so the technique that I used here was called a ponytail balayage. And I actually put this model's hair into 2 ponytails. And I only painted the ends of the ponytails to get this look. And what I love about that is when you really think about childlike hair color in balayage, women that would put their hair on top of their head would have the lighter ends, And so you could use this in brunettes, you could use this in blondes, but I think it's extra special in this redhead because it lets her natural hair look so beautiful without taking away from the strength of it at the regrowth.
It's absolutely stunning. Love it. What was the technique that you used here?
So this technique was a technique I call sombre. And what's really funny is, you know, we use words and hair color that are always unique and different. But when people would say sombre with balayage, I think they were thinking about a soft look of ombre. But for me, sombre meant the side. So this I only painted one side of the hair. I left everything else the way that it was, just to create energy with a shaggy type of look. And actually what's interesting about this technique is it's probably 8 or 9 years old now. Wow. And to me, I feel that it is really relevant in today's trends as we're seeing hair become more shaggy. But I think it really tells the balayage artist that not everything has to be symmetrical. Not everything, I often use the term, sides should be sisters, not twins. Balayage to me is an emotion. So to me, this just gives this haircut emotion.
Beautiful.
And this technique that I used, obviously a very classic shape, just a nice classic French bob. But how do you get color in a bob without making it look linear? When you're foiling hair and you try to follow the line of this part line, you tend to put what I call hash marks on a football field, which is every 5 yards there's a hash mark. So the technique that I used here is a technique I call spider lights. And I just gave it the name just so that people can kind of imagine that the body of the spider is all over the part line, meaning that body would stay dark. And the legs of the spider sort of peek out from underneath. When we talk in balayage, we always talk about peaks and valleys. And one thing that I think is important to identify in a bob is where the hair breaks open. And where the hair breaks open is typically the valley of the hair or the darkness or the shadow. And where the lightness comes through is on that ridge where it breaks open. So I created a technique called spider lights where you can create those peaks and valleys or those ridges and create fun hair color without having lines.
I think it's absolutely gorgeous because it just looks so natural. And a question that I have regarding the whole balayage world, I remember maybe it's 20 years ago, forgive me if I've got the time frame wrong, when I first saw a technique where there was the shadowed area and the vibrancy around the perimeter. The very first time I saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, that's crazy. We're going to shoot ourselves in the foot because we are saying it's okay to have this massive regrowth. It's going to kill our industry. And I was actually quite negative about it because I thought, oh my gosh, this is like old color on the ends, you know, and it's like been amazing how it's evolved into an art, how it's totally reshaped our industry, how it's been so lucrative, how it does look so natural. And yes, it can go wrong. We all see that. So talk to me about when it's right and it's expensive and when it's wrong and it looks like my earlier comment.
Well, I would have to agree with you. And if you'll back up with me for just a second, I was even told by the leading manufacturers that balayage was just a trend and that it was going to go away and that people were going to get tired of just color on the end. So I completely hear where you're coming from. But for me, balayage was a little black dress. I knew that this trend would be the hottest thing going since the feathers. You remember those, right? Yeah. When everybody was putting feathers in the hair and thought that was going to be the trend. But the reality is the power of the paintbrush can paint anything. I mean, if you look at my hair, it's all the way through to the scalp. But what I think that's unique about balayage is it actually makes hair look younger. And that's a really hard thing to teach in the classroom, like how does something make hair look younger? And it's really the nature in which where balayage lives, which is flat and on the surface instead of like spaghetti and round. And so to me, I think what is unleashed is the inner artist of now a hair designer can be behind the chair and make it their own. And I love the fact that now you become codependent on your hairstylist because they see placement so much different than a pattern of foiling or a pattern that you might do. Now, nothing against foiling, because of course I still foil hair, but it's just a different take on how color lives in hair. And to me, it does look more expensive. It does look more purposeful, I think is a good word to use. The placement of that accessory of color is now living with the haircut. So for me, I cut hair before I color hair.
Beautiful.
I would never paint your hair without obviously cutting it first, because it's putting the accessory with the dress that's so important.
Well, let's talk about the state of the union, especially during COVID. There's been such a disruption, and many stylists realizing, well, I'm just going to go out there by myself. And we don't know what the future holds. We don't know. We do know that trends go in cycles, and we do know that what was old will come back again new. What do you predict, if you could look into your crystal ball, what do you see as the next step for our industry? Or what would you recommend as the next step for our industry?
Well, I think it's important to always identify that education is key. And of course, with the digital age right now, YouTube, fabulous videos such as yours, Viv TV, all these wonderful things that are out there as great resources. I think the caliber of stylist is growing in some aspects, but in other aspects, it's just getting by. And I would like to say that I've been very lucky, to be an educator, to be a manufacturer, to have an academy, to attract that caliber of hairdressing. But I would be remiss to not be honest and say to your viewers out there, I realize why a lot of people go out on their own. They go out on their own because they don't have good mentorship. They go out on their own because they don't have a good leader at the salon that they work at. So they think, why not just do it on my own? And so I kind of understand that psychology of both. And where do I see it going? I mean, I think it's really unpredictable, more now than ever before. I don't think that as fast as things changed in this past year, that we could even remotely think that it's not going to move at lightning speed going forward.
You said something very powerful about how in your business during COVID, the leadership, the mentorship was the thing that was the glue that helped you go through a very, very difficult time. For many people, their salons closed. For many, they did not have the leadership. For many, they thought, well, I better just go off by myself. So all of this has created something quite extraordinary. Where do you see this now moving? And what do we learn from this, whether you're an independent or a salon owner?
Well, we learned that that things can change overnight, and quite frankly, that can change hour to hour. I don't think any of us ever expected the tsunami that we just went through. And when you talked about, how did we survive this? I said to you, because I was smart enough along the way to always have a war chest and to be prepared for that rainy day, as my mom and dad used to always tell me to prepare for a rainy day. Well, I would have never expected to have quite the rain that we have gone through. But what I would say is that things are changing in our industry. And I do understand why a lot of folks think that going out on their own is the right place for them to be. But I do think that things are very secular. And I think that clients or guests in our salons now are going to expect a different level of service. The fact that we've had to integrate the sanitation and the things that we've had to integrate through COVID, it's also made guests question where they are. We're seeing a huge uptick in new clients. And I would have never imagined that once we opened our doors back from COVID, that we would be getting so many new clients. And I think a lot of that is through the power of our size and the leadership that we have. But the message is that we're doing things the right way. Now, how is that going to look 3, 4, 5 years from now? I'm not 100% sure.
Do you feel that your clients have a greater value for your services, having been deprived the opportunity to come in and visit you?
Absolutely. And you couldn't buy that kind of marketing if you tried.
No.
You know, there's no way. I mean, all of my whole career, I've always had 2 times a year that I would go up on pricing. And that was typically right before Easter and right before Thanksgiving. Those were times that I would always look at the analytics of our business and think about increasing prices. But now I think they really value who we are, what we are, and what we're all about. Having not had us, like I said, that's not something we could have ever predicted of how they would feel about their hairstylist.
And I think too, sometimes we get so hung up on the actual dollar or the pound, whatever the currency is, and we forget about selling value. Because when something is valued and it's quality, then the price is irrelevant, because the quality of what you're doing and the service and the experience supersedes all of that. And it's not questioned because it's the right value on the right person, right? You know,
Yeah.
and that's the key. It's recognizing, stretching to this point, this person will appreciate it more. Stretching a little less, this person will appreciate it equally, because not all things for everybody. And I think that's where the consultation is so powerful, which we're going to get into a little bit later on. I'm very keen to hear how you go through your consultation. But before we go there, you mentioned your war chest and you spoke about being prepared. I wanted to ask you a question about the best business decision you ever made.
Well, the best business decision I ever made was the ones I didn't make. And I've said that to many people. They always ask me this question. And I would say that the power of no has been something I had to really learn to embrace, to not fear no, but embrace the fact that it is okay to say no. Because no to me doesn't mean never. It doesn't mean, it could mean maybe. It just means not right now. And I think that positioning yourself and teeing yourself up for success, you have to know when to turn away from something that could cost you a bad decision. The best business decision I ever made was buying the business from my father, without question, entrusting myself to do so. But I think I can't trickle down into one small aspect other than the ones that I said absolutely not. I had to go through a lot to get there, but once I did, I was very empowered and grateful that I had said no.
So for you to make a good business decision, and you look at all the stars being in alignment from concept right the way to the final output. So, you've got, you're now a manufacturer, which is a huge responsibility. And that's a huge different industry to being a salon owner. When you look at all the different ways, when you have to go from concept right the way through to the end and see the legs of that idea and the return on that investment, give me an example of where your stars are in alignment before you actually go for it.
Well, interesting that you say it like that, because when I go to our team and I sit in a powwow and we're having a meeting over something we want to launch or an idea that we have, I always start with the problem and then find the solution. And that's probably more about how I'm built with a dyslexic mind, is I always go from the back to the front. Mm-hmm. So in order for the stars to be in complete alignment for me, I have to know all of the things that can go wrong first.
Yes.
And when I figure out, okay, what would this look like? Who's going to police that? How's that going to work? But when I figure out all the problem solving, then the stars are aligned for me to make a decision as to whether or not I want to move forward. It's probably not the easiest way to do business, if I'm being honest, because I do want to punch the positivity and I want to always try to look at the bright side of things. But for me, I think that I find that I look at what the downside is, and then I figure out a way to overcompensate for that.
Words of wisdom. What drives your passion?
Oh, family, without question, is my number one thing that drives me, because I know I'm building the next generation for my family. But I would say that my happy place is definitely in the classroom. It's when I'm giving someone else a leg up or an opportunity to shine. Yeah. And that's really when I feel that I'm leaving my legacy in the place that I feel is important. I've never looked at a paycheck. I never do. Money is not my motivator. As a matter of fact, money makes you more of what you already are. And so for me, it's about creating an environment that I'm proud of, a place of compassion, a place of empathy, a place of sometimes sympathy to those who are struggling. And when I can give that back to this industry, then that's the greatest payout of all for me.
So what was the inspiration when you came out with your own line?
Well, actually, I did it really for my salon in the beginning, because I was struggling to find a product that I could rely on, distributors and the people, the resources that I had to find a good balayage lightener were drying up, no pun intended. And I'm from Georgia, so the natural resource in Georgia is red Georgia clay. And so it came to me that, hey, why not create a lightener using clay so that it would adhere to hair? I thought, you know what? I'm going to make lightener sexy. I'm going to make it really pretty. I'm going to make people realize that it can be the hero, not the zero. And more importantly, try to go after this market of balayage. And it was a big leap of faith, and the rest, they might say, is history. You know, we're distributed in 13 countries now, and I can't even believe it myself when I say those words.
That's wonderful. Has it been harder to do than you expected to develop your own product?
I would say no. It's not been as hard as I expected, but it's only because I put my trust into people that could help me along the way in my own family. As I mentioned before, I think that I've done it at the speed at which I have wanted to do it. In the beginning, I think I was very nervous that if I didn't come out with a lot of things all at once, that I wouldn't be taken seriously. And then right away, after the first year of having sunlights, I realized, you know what? You can do this at your own pace. You don't have to be a company of this size to be, magical. You can actually do something at whatever size you want and be very successful. And once I kind of realized that, and everything I've been doing now is literally just for fun.